So we have grasslands on the eastern side of the state. We have, the forested mountains. We even have above timberline, and we have all our riparian areas that kind of crisscross everywhere in between. There are many that we are watching for many reasons. Looking at how climate may be impacting them, how habitat loss and fragmentation is impacting them. Greater sage grouse is a big one for our sagebrush steppe ecosystem. It's what we call a keystone species. If we can help the greater sage grouse, we'll probably be helping a lot of other species, such as vesper sparrow, brewer's sparrow, sagebrush sparrow, sage thrasher, all of those species that use and, quite frankly, are not doing so hot themselves and are on watch lists, such as the Partners in Flight watch list. Grasslands are one of our most imperiled ecosystems in the world. We're looking at burrowing owls. They have a really strong tie with prairie dogs, using their burrows for nesting sites. And they do migrate. They go south. They don't hang out here too cold. Burrowing owl would be another one. Lark bunting is a really interesting one. We've seen declines in their populations. So when you talk about migration, they come in and they are really fickle. They're going to go where the food is. No tie to, well, I stopped here last year, so I'm going to stop here again. Riparian areas, we have the cuckoo, the yellow-billed cuckoo, the southwest little flycatcher, all really good indicators of ecosystem health. We like to segment into those ecosystems, right? So we have riparian over here, grassland over here, and sagebrush over here. But then, how do they all work together? These birds fly over all of these habitat zones.
I don't know if you're familiar with the National Arboretum, but they have an eagle webcam. And there were 2 eaglets, and that was delightful. As I was watching these eaglets, there was a difference in the development. I knew they didn't hatch on the same day, so obviously the one that hatched first was going to have a little bit of a head start. The second one was just not developing as much, and it can happen that you can have sibling rivalry and one can eat the other. And I thought, oh my God, I've got to just tune right out of this because I do not want to see this. It's normal for the development to be different because they don't hatch the frequency time, there can be up to a week difference in the hatching time. And that they were both developing fine, and that professionals did not see any evidence of all that. So then I tuned back in and was so relieved that we didn't have any terrible sibling haven't been back since they both flew the coop. When they got to a certain point where they looked big enough and ready enough to leave the nest, they didn't do it. But what they would do is they would take little leaps from one end of the nest to the other side. They're learning how to fly by not taking one huge leap and hoping their wings would work. But they're going first from one end of the nest to the other, and then you watch them go from one limb to the other, close by.
There's 3 different types of fish. We have freshwater fish that live their whole life in freshwater. We have saltwater fish that spend their whole life in the ocean. And then we have what's called anadromous fish, which are born in freshwater, spend their juvenile stage in freshwater, then they get big enough to get into the ocean, they get bigger. Then when they want to reproduce, they come back into the freshwater. So fish like salmon, like bass, travel thousands of miles from the ocean and come up into the creeks and rivers back to the dams within a few feet of where they were born to lay their eggs and stuff like the process the whole way. There are these things called fish liners. So early in the probably like 2030s, they started damming up a lot of rivers and creeks and streams for water supplies for cities. Now that it's 80 years later, we have larger reservoirs and better systems. Fish can't spawn with the dam and stay up where they're trying to go. So what they started doing is constructing ladders. Basically like a maze that the fish can swim up and get over the dam into the river so they can spawn, and then when they leave, they just go back down. Every fisherman has a story of the big one that got away. I had hooked on to probably close to a 40-inch striped bass up in the bay. I'm fighting it for a few minutes. It's peeling drag. You get it close to the boat, I can finally see the fish, and the fish like looks me in the eye, shakes his head, the hook pops out, and then he's gone.
direction of just road. Five lanes, one direction, 5 lanes, the other direction. On just a square foot of road, there's no life. In a square foot of forest, you have so much life, even in the soil, all the protozoas, nematodes, bacteria, that's incredibly higher in the forest because of the oxygen. And under the road, even that soil under the road, you don't have as much life because there's no oxygen, it's impacting soil. And nothing can exist on a road, right? And nothing really exists above. You might have birds fly over, but in a forest you have layers. There's lots of layers of life in the forest, and we have these 10 lanes of highway, and it's just us.
I had a tree that was dead, and my neighbor said, why don't you make it into a snag? And you don't cut it all the way down, you just cut it off where it divides at the trunk. It's still a home for a lot of animals. I'm across from an elementary school. With construction and stuff, they had to cut down a lot of trees, so I went to Maryfield and paid for a tree to be planted at Ashland. The gardener told me that oaks have about 300 caterpillars that live on them, different kinds of insects. They're a very good tree to support wildlife. So I picked an oak to put at the school. That's one of the best things you can do is plant I think it's a white oak tree, it has the most diversified life on it, and then it'll support the birds and other animals. I have a lot of chipmunks, squirrels of course, and in the summer I noticed the butterflies. And they said it's really important to plant milkweed because the monarch caterpillars, that's the only plant they can eat. I'm trying to be more conscious of putting native plants, like tulips aren't native. Try to support the wildlife.
It's possible. It's going to be a challenge because it goes beyond just technology. It's an abstract representation of the processes and the hardware that's associated with this process of taking wind, solar, and tidal, converting it into energy, clean energy. Thoughts on canvas. Those pieces are part of the results of what I wanted to say, or at least raise an awareness of the fact that it's not totally doom and gloom. We've got some of the technology. see in there, the suggestion of rays coming down on diagonal, there's also interwoven in there forms that are suggestive of those solar cells. I start working on the computer to do a little bit of juggling around in terms of color relationships and in terms of composition. The end piece never really looks, and it shouldn't look like it was on the computer, but it gets me started. After that, work into the canvas, computer's on, and then it's a matter of then developing the actual pieces. I started with an idea, but inevitably, and this is no exception, once I get started, each step in the process dictates what the next step is going to be. I don't really know where it's going to go, but I know when I'm there.
Kenilworth, the Aquatic Gardens. I've been going for maybe 30 years. The negative spaces in between the reflections of sunlight, the darks, the lights, the shapes, all of that is very inspirational to me. There are marshes from where the Anacostia River runs, and these marshes used to be full of garbage. In the last, I believe, 5 years, there's been a program started to clean the Anacostia River. The plant life has grown exponentially. And it's full of beautiful birds, white herons, blue herons, egrets, which shows that there's also fish life now. So all of this is a way of renewing the nature that was there before. There's such a delight in these wonderful things, and they're so fragile. And these are things that inspire me to paint. The image you have in your head, and then what starts evolving in front of you, and how you come to terms with either trying to make what your original idea was, or accepting it and going down maybe another path. That happens often when I'm painting, and this painting started out very geometrically. The geometric started being layered over, and then the mark making comes in, the gestural drawing. What originally I conceived to be one thing came out completely different and much better actually than what I wanted to do. There is a Buddhist saying, the lotus comes from the mud.
I was supposed to Rome. And I spent a lot of time looking out my window, watching birds, particularly these monk parakeets. I would walk along the Tiber in the evening and watch the sun go down, this beautiful sunset sky over the lovely city of Rome. And these murmurations of these birds were like kinetic sculptures. They were really fascinating. Spent a lot of time in the Baroque churches looking at the beautiful fresco ceilings. So all these visual references, you can see them in its painting Rebirth, this reference to like circular ceilings, the beautiful skies, the heavens going up, and then the birds. The painting Rebirth is part of a larger series called Jeopardy. In this series, I lend my voice to endangered species, particularly that can't speak for themselves. I draw attention to these different species that are under a lot of pressure due to their habitats are being destroyed, maybe their migration patterns are being disrupted. The bird that I featured in that painting in particular was the Carolina parakeet that was went extinct in 1918, and it was due to human intervention. Visual images and I do digital sketches. I'll do almost like a collage, and then I'll change the saturation of the colors and I'll move things around. And I typically like really dense compositions. Some of that transparent color underlying peek through. So you might see some washy drips. You might see maybe a sketch of a line or something, and then I can build up that surface until I get that sort of vibrant surface that I like.
In January, it's usually very gray. And I'm always looking at the structure of trees, clouds, nature that surrounds me. And nature played a huge role in my peace of mind during the first several months of the pandemic, which was also part of the residency. So I was in a large building, in a large studio, all by myself. Well, we were all isolated. It was so important to be out, getting fresh air, being with someone, sharing this experience, and then put it back into your work. You want it to be not only representational, but hopefully it connects to the viewer on a level that they can see themselves in that isolated space. You just sort of drift back and you can almost feel like you've been engulfed in that forest. Those shadows are running very deep. I typically will work on several pieces at a time, because one piece will lead to another, and something won't work on one, so you know you can't do that on the other. few years, I've been concentrating more on climate change work. Mine is more about the urgency to protect what's vanishing quickly. The process is, it's layering, it's usually light to dark, and building layers and striking away layers. Sort of mimics what's happening in nature. Is, you know, it starts off very pristine, and then man comes along and wipes it out, and we've got to rebuild and renew.
It is about the plastic that gets into the ocean. There's many different ways that can happen. And that's why I was drawn to cyanotypes, which are blue. They look like the water underwater. I am also a litter picker-upper, and I was a steward of Sligo Creek, which is near my house. Washes into the storm drains, and then it washes down into the creeks, and then the creeks empty into rivers, and the rivers empty into the oceans. But it's all, of course, from humanity. Even if you are just a normal person walking down the street, you can do something about this issue. It's just a small thing that you see a plastic bottle on the street, pick it up and put it in the trash. Kind of a message of hope that, you know, there's something an individual can do to keep this awful plastic out of the ocean. Plastic that's used in the piece is from a job site that was near my house, and they have these squares of building materials, and then they wrap them all in these sheets of plastic. But it's actually quite lovely. And also, it sort of, you know, undulates and is transparent. The sea turtle will think that this is a jellyfish and will eat it. And so that makes things even worse. That it's, you know, not just trash in the ocean, it's a, you know, a material that got this sinister story to it. When I exposed the piece, I did it on my back deck. When I washed it out, I just had this feeling that this piece was really something special. It gave me goosebumps. It was just so beautiful.
Para los que vengan, limpiemos los platos. Sobrevivan, por favor. 12 años es todo, confíen para volver. Sobrevivan, por favor. 12 años es todo, confíen para volver. La tontiza y jabón, de pared a pared, sin luz. No digas sangrientos, alambre muertos de alfabeto. No digas sangrientos, alambre muertos de alfabeto. Señor, el calabozo, la verdad que no tenía. Tortura y tres locuras, desde el pantano que no me tropiezan sin pan. Te he perdido tantas veces, inevitable ser recuerdo y la angustia del reencuentro de tu piel contra mi piel me ha costado tanto y tanto que ya mi alma se marchita y se deshacen lagrimitas que se olvidaron de besar. Y si yo hubiera sabido que para ti era tan poco, hubiera sido más prudente al entregarte el corazón. Y si yo hubiera sabido que para ti todo era un juego, aquel verano entre tus besos, no hubiera escrito esta canción. Poco a poco perdiendo la claridad de tu retrato, pero no olvido ni un segundo el dulce tacto de tu mano.